PFR Nation, this is Kevin Lau, your host of the Planning for Retirement podcast, and welcome to another episode. Today is going to be a really fun one. Today, I prompted GPT, which is AI, artificial intelligence. So I asked a robot when it makes sense to hire a financial advisor. And so more specifically, the prompt that I put in was, I am between the ages of 50 to 65, and I've saved diligently on my own. But when and how should I look for a financial advisor to help me plan for and execute a successful retirement? That was the prompt that I did. And I got to tell you, I thought it was pretty good because initially I was going to brainstorm this whole podcast on this idea of, hey, when should I hire an advisor, and sort of give you my thoughts on when you should hire an advisor. But then I sort of got to thinking, like, that's not really objective. Okay. That's very subjective. I'm extremely biased. Okay. I've been a licensed financial advisor since 2008. So of course I'm going to tell you, you should hire an advisor right away. And frankly, you should probably hire me. All right. And so then I sort of got to thinking, I said, hey, that would be really cool to ask GPT, who is, I don't even know, who is supposed to be objective. Okay. And sort of brainstorm that way. And I thought the outline was so darn good. I was just like, I'm just going to roll with this exact outline and have some fun with this one. And then I did a follow-up prompt. Which was, how do I look for this financial advisor? So I thought this was really, really great. And so don't take my word for it, take ChatGPT. So we're going to dive into this one in just a moment here. But first, I'd like to just say, I appreciate all of you. I know it is Thanksgiving season. It's the holiday season. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. And we had a great Thanksgiving. We spent it mostly here in our home base in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but we also ventured out to Nashville, Tennessee to visit my wife's brother and his family, which was phenomenal. Always love to see the Eckerd clan. And we also stayed at the Gaylord Opryland in Nashville. So that was a blast. Our boys loved it. Quote unquote, I took a few days of vacation last week for Thanksgiving, but listen, parenting 3 young boys under the age of 6 years old, not necessarily relaxing. Okay, listen, I love my boys. It is enjoyable, but not necessarily relaxing. Okay, so I don't feel like I just had a vacation. I frankly was a lot more tired after the week of Thanksgiving than I was pre-Thanksgiving, but feeling like the last couple of days, getting my rest in, getting back into the routine, getting back into the workout regimen, and feeling really, really good. So I'm super excited about the holiday season, but I just wanted to say thank you all to all of you listeners. There's been a lot of you are new listeners. Okay. I feel like I'm going to make a guess here. 90% of our new listeners have come in the last 6 months. That's just more, my rough estimate. I can go crunch the numbers here and report back next time. But the number of impressions and followers that we've been seeing on Spotify, which is where we post our podcast, the video form, has been pretty exciting. I'm really excited to have all of you join me on this journey of helping educate and empower people to plan for retirement, retire sooner than they otherwise would have. I think that's a big thing. I see a lot of folks that are planning for retirement. They're in such saving mode for so long, 2 decades, sometimes 3 decades. And it's really hard to turn it off because especially at the end, it gets really exciting, as that compounding interest really starts to kick in. All of a sudden it's like, hey, I had $2 million 6-7 years ago. Now all of a sudden I have $4 million, because of compounding interest. On top of that, contributions that you've made over the last few years. And so it gets really exciting at the end. So sometimes I see people, it's hard to turn it off because you get excited about all the growth that you're experiencing in that final decade of retirement. But I've sort of seen that get in the way of people retiring as early as they could have, if that makes any sense. So love doing this podcast. And like I said, this was probably the easiest podcast or the least amount of preparation time I put in to preparing for a podcast. So I guess, hey, listen, there's the value of ChatGPT. There's the value of AI, because a lot of these ideas that ChatGPT came out with were frankly ideas that I was going to share anyways. But again, like I said, I wanted to give it straight from the horse's mouth, straight from the robot who's curating information all over the internet and providing this information to you, PFR Nation. So anyway, welcome all the new listeners. Appreciate everyone who's been supporting me since day one, early 2021. We've been doing the podcast. And really over the last 18 months, we've been doing the consistent every 2 weeks on Thursday, and we'll continue to do so. I've kicked around the idea of going weekly. We'll see what happens. But for now, we're going to go every other week and see where we go in 2025. So I wish all of you a wonderful holiday season. This episode is going to be coming out, I don't know, let's see, today is December 3rd. So we've got the 5th on Thursday. So it's going to be coming out on the 12th. So we're probably going to only have one more episode after this one is released. And typically we do the whiteboard retirement plan. I said to you all, I'm going to do every 4 to 5 episodes. We don't have any whiteboard retirement plan surveys that were input. So if you all want to be featured on the whiteboard retirement plan and have me break down your retirement objectives and your financial situation, anonymously, of course, make sure to fill out the retirement readiness survey. The link is in the show notes and you can fill it out. Just make sure to indicate that you are submitting this on behalf of the whiteboard retirement plan initiative. Okay. And so because we do have new prospective clients that use that same link to apply to work with us. Okay. So just make sure to distinguish and say, hey, Kevin, we don't want to hire you. We just want you to break down our retirement goals on a whiteboard and give us and the listeners some initial thoughts on our plan. So we did one episode, I think it was 55, which was the 5.5 million coasting to retirement. We also did one, I think it was episode 49. Might be getting the numbers mixed up a little bit. 49 was the first one we did. That was volume 1. And that was 1.5 million. Should I retire at 65? So both were very well received. This is the last one we did. I mean, the 5.5 million one, I definitely had some people say, who has $5.5 million, in their 50s? And listen, a lot of you PFR Nation are overachievers, but I don't want you to get it twisted. It's not like we're only doing this for folks that are in that higher net worth or ultra high net worth scenario. I mean, in our practice, we serve people in that $1 to $5 million range. Some have more than 5 million. Some have a little less than 1 million, but that's generally the sweet spot. I'd even say 2 to 5 million is really our sweet spot. But I think for the whiteboard retirement plan, it can be whatever. I don't care what your financial situation is, as long as you're in this mode of planning for retirement and you think your case study is might be valuable for the audience. Share your situation in the retirement readiness survey link. And like I said, I will break this down. But I think for the next one, for the whiteboard retirement plan, what I want to do is I'm going to take an initial financial plan that we did. I'm going to go back a decade, okay? Because we've been working with some of these clients for over a decade. I'm going to go back a decade and I'm going to say, okay, this was the starting point. This was what you were trying to achieve 10 years ago. How did things shake out from 2014 now to 2024? How did that individual fare from a retirement planning perspective? And what are some of those things that they learned to, hopefully that I can pass on to you all to better prepare for retirement? What do they wish they would have done differently? What are some of the things that they are happy they did? So anyways, I'm excited about that one. I have a few of those cases in mind. I just need to go back and find the data. And then again, I'm going to put pen to paper and pen to whiteboard. I don't know. Pen to whiteboard. And we'll do that probably as the final episode of 2024. So that's what's going on for this year. And then we're going to get into 2025. I've got so many topics that I want to cover. And so we're going to get things started with some exciting topics in 2025. But if you have a topic request that you're interested in, that you want to hear, send me a note. Send me an email, kevin@imaginefinancialsecurity.com. Just send me an email, or you can even drop a comment in the Spotify or the YouTube. We're posting all of our episodes on YouTube. And by the way, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because in addition to the podcast that we post every 2 weeks, we're also doing the whiteboard fireside, the whiteboard fireside chats, not to get it confused with the whiteboard retirement plan. The whiteboard fireside chats is more of a deep dive on a specific topic, sort of like a one-off. So the one I literally just recorded today was around mistakes that I typically see with qualified charitable distributions. When we're reviewing tax returns for clients, we see this time and time and again, year after year. No matter how much we try to communicate to our clients and their CPAs, sometimes this does get missed. And so I cannot imagine you PFR Nation, all of you that are doing qualified charitable distributions, how many times this gets missed. And you may not even know it. Okay. You may not even be checking for this, because you just assume your CPA, your tax preparers, getting the tax return done, and then boom, you're off and running, not really, spending the time to review that and where that QCD, qualified charitable distribution, should show up. So check that whiteboard fireside chat out. It certainly will be out by the time this podcast is posted. So, all right, without further ado, I'm going to get out the outline here that ChatGPT created. I'm just going to go down the list here. We're going to talk through, there are 5 things that ChatGPT came up with in terms of when to consider hiring a financial planner. And then, like I said, the second prompt was how to find a financial advisor that specializes in working with folks like you. So why don't we just start here, top of the list. Number 1, transitioning from accumulation to the distribution phase. All right. This is low hanging fruit. Like I said, these are things that I probably would have said, but I will emphasize this is probably the number one reason I have clients reach out to me to hire me. Okay. Because many of you and many of them have done well saving and investing on their own in the accumulation phase. They're maxing out their 401ks. They're maxing out their Roth accounts. They're maxing out the HSAs. Maybe they're even doing a taxable brokerage account. They're paying off their mortgage. But then when you approach retirement, this psychological shift changes where it's like, oh my gosh, like how am I actually going to turn this into an income stream? And how is all this tax business, how is that going to impact my retirement income? You've got all these income sources. You've got Social Security. You've got maybe a pension. Maybe you have annuities. Maybe you have tax deferred accounts. Maybe you have tax free accounts. Maybe you have taxable brokerage accounts. And just sort of like all of these things are pieces to the puzzle that you have to put together. And this is honestly, the fact that they put this as number one, I totally agree with that. Okay. This mindset and the financial differences of the decumulation phase or the distribution phase relative to the accumulation phase is a big one. All right. So not only the mechanics on that in terms of tax implications and what bucket to draw first. Do you tap into your taxable account first or your tax deferred account first or your tax free account first? All of those mechanics. Not only that, but I think this idea of like, what is a safe withdrawal rate? Okay. I've talked about this on the podcast before, the 4% rule and guardrails and the impact of following the 4% rule versus distributing more. And then the timing of withdrawals. Your rate of withdrawal is not going to be the same throughout retirement. And so I think this one is a big one because what I oftentimes see, especially for the DIY crowd, okay, because I follow from Facebook groups and forums and whatnot, oftentimes the DIY crowd, what I've noticed, because some of them, we do one-time engagements for some people, okay? We're very selective on this one now, but sometimes if people hire us to do one-time engagements, I can see ourselves cutting that off at some point in 2025. Not for the folks that have hired us in the past. We'll probably still honor those engagements. So I know some of you are listening. You're like, what the, Kevin, what are you talking about? You said you were going to honor that. Don't worry. If you've hired us before for a one-time engagement, I'm not going to kick you out of the club. Okay. We'll continue to work together. But what I've seen for a lot of them that are in retirement, that are DIYing their distribution plan, their income plan, 99% of them, honestly, 100%. I'm going to just say 100%. Okay. At least the ones that have come to us, 100% of them are underspending in retirement. And they don't have this grandiose goal of leaving a massive financial legacy, but they're underspending because they're just so afraid to make a mistake. They're so afraid of overspending early on in retirement that they underspend for so long. And all of a sudden they get to their mid 70s and like, man, like now my account balance is actually grown even in excess of inflation protection. And now it's like, man, I could have really enjoyed that a little bit more in my go-go years, when we were able to do a little bit more of that world travel or, when the grandkids were young. It's like, think about the impact and the time value of money. Money has its greatest utility in your 50s and 60s, okay? Not in your 70s, 80s, and 90s, okay? And frankly, not even in your 20s and 30s. Really there's this sweet spot of, and the Die with Zero book, Bill Perkins really nailed this on the head. It's like the utility of money declines over time. It hits its peak in its 50s and 60s, and then it declines over time. And so I'm such a big fan of this idea of enjoying your go-go years, maximizing the experiences, maximizing your spending in those go-go years, because you don't know how long those are going to last. Okay. Frankly, I do have clients that are in their 80s right now. And the two I'm thinking off the top of my head, frankly, they're kind of even go-go health. One of them just took a trip to Scotland and they're still doing it. They're taking trips all the time, but some people are not as fortunate. I've told this story before where I had this teacher, this professor that I worked with, and she had this goal of retiring at 65. She was squirreling away all of her dollars. And frankly, I wish I would have said to her, hey, listen, you can retire now. When I first started working with her, she was probably 62 at the time. She had plenty of money to retire. She had no beneficiary. She didn't care about maximizing legacy. I should have been like, retire now. You can do this. She passed away from a heart attack like 2 months after she retired. She had these plans of traveling around the world and enjoying her retirement. And it's just, no one has a crystal ball. Okay. You don't know how long those go-go years are going to last. And so I'm a really big fan of maximizing that spending in the go-go years and not underspending in those go-go years. And so I feel like this is a big, we can stop right there. That's really all you need to know is that bullet point number one, this transition from the accumulator to the DQ. All right. Number two, yeah, I think this is a good one. ChatGPT does a good job of organizing this in terms of order of importance. This says navigating complex tax implications. All right. Yeah, I mean, I would say this is probably number two, if not 1A. I would say decumulation would be 1A. This would be 1B, if not number two. I mean, it's a very close second, this idea of tax implications. And truthfully, this was a big driver, among other reasons, that I decided to go independent and start my own firm back in 2020, because one time I wrote an email to a client and I said the word tax. I wasn't giving any tax advice, but I said the word tax. And ultimately, the chief compliance officer came back and said, Kevin, you can't give tax advice. What are you doing? You're not a CPA. And I said, well, first of all, I'm not giving tax advice. But then second of all, this is kind of interesting because every movement of money has a tax consequence. Wouldn't it make sense for me to know what my client's tax situation is before I'm talking about moving money? That kind of really hit me hard. All right. I didn't say that to my chief compliance officer, but that was what I was thinking at the time. And I was like, there's got to be a better way of doing this. No disrespect to my previous employers, great companies, loved working with them. But after 12 years working for big firms, love being independent. This has been by far the most rewarding part of my career. And I feel like we're just getting started here. But taxes is a big one. Order of withdrawals, impact of taxable brokerage accounts, tax loss harvesting, Roth conversions in those go-go years, in this retirement distribution hatchet is what we like to call it. Required minimum distributions, qualified charitable distributions, donor advised funds, estate taxes, IRMA surcharges, social security taxes. There's different pieces to the puzzle from a tax planning perspective that if you just have a good process, a solid process every year, review those tax returns, review your projected income in years going forward, you can save a lot of money. I'm not going to put any guarantees out there, but I'm telling you right now, I have seen clients, and this is just an estimate here, but I've seen clients optimizing a tax efficient strategy. They can save multiple six figures, if not seven figures in taxes during their lifetime. Okay. And let alone taxes to their heirs. So tax planning is a big one. And absolutely, this is a big reason why I see people hire advisors, especially advisors that are focused on retirement income and specifically tax planning in retirement, is because it's very complicated. The IRS code is ridiculously complicated, okay? And to study all of that and learn that on your own, it is a full-time job. That's why we have CPAs. That's why we have enrolled agents. That's why we have financial planners that are dedicated, like myself, to retirement planning and specifically retirement income and tax planning. It is very complicated and everything is correlated. Everything is integrated, okay? It's not like you do one thing and then, you can kind of do something else over here. You pull one lever, it's going to impact your entire plan from a tax perspective. So just understanding that is a big reason I do believe that people hire a financial advisor. Number 3, it says maximizing Social Security and Medicare benefits. Yeah, I mean, that's low hanging fruit for sure. When to take Social Security. And I think also this sort of goes into number 2 as well, because the blanket advice out there is just going to be delay Social Security until 70, right? But there could be some other nuances there. There could be, hey, let's maximize the survivor benefit. Maybe there's one high earner and maybe there's a stay-at-home spouse. And so therefore the stay-at-home spouse maybe has a very small Social Security benefit. So maybe it makes sense for them to do the spousal benefit. But then on the flip side, maybe that other spouse, the one that was the high earner, maybe they delay it until 70. So that way it maximizes the survivor benefit for that surviving spouse. So I think there's other things as well, like taxes. If you retire at, let's say, 65 or 66 or 67, you may have 8 years or even 10 years before you start taking required minimum distributions at 73 or 75. That's a great window to say, hey, taxable income is super low. Let's get aggressive with Roth conversions. And, by delaying Social Security, you could sort of open up this window of basically very little taxable income. And you've got this taxable brokerage account you're drawing from. You've got the Roth conversion strategy. Whew, man, you could really set yourself up for a very tax efficient retirement by thinking about the timing of Social Security and really just looking at this is longevity protection. Is there longevity in the family and the timing of how it correlates to withdrawals on the portfolio? Because there's also a behavioral aspect too. If you delay Social Security, maybe your withdrawal rate is super high early on. That might feel uncomfortable for a lot of you. Okay. And this is a big reason I see people just take Social Security early. Maybe it's at 65 or 66, even though we tell them, hey, listen, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we recommend delaying. But I understand your concern, and maybe we just start Social Security just simply based on the fact that you're going to reduce your withdrawal rate early on and preserve that principal balance, because delaying Social Security is all based on the premise of longevity. If you don't make it to 80, 81, 82, you're probably better off taking it at full retirement age or even at 62. So No one has a crystal ball on this one, but I definitely think guiding the decisions on Social Security is a big value add. That's good. Customized investment strategy. I do think the industry is oversimplifying investments a little bit too much. I think this idea of VT Sax and chill, the VT SAX and chill. It's a meme. If for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. It's basically this idea of just owning passively managed index funds and just holding that and just chilling. Okay. And I think in the accumulation phase, going back to the bullet point one, I think that's totally fine. Accumulation phase, VT Sax and chill, maybe do some additional strat. Actually, that's oversimplifying it. I do believe in a further diversification than that. But at its core, having a passively managed investment strategy and sticking to that strategy until the decumulation phase, nothing wrong with that. But I think the industry is oversimplifying investment management a little bit too much to where people are just so passive. And all of a sudden they wake up in 2022 and their BND fund is down 12, 15%. They're like, what happened there? What, this didn't work. Oh, because you were passive and you weren't actively managing risk. And I think this is really where an investment professional can really add value, is managing risk in retirement. Because in the accumulation phase, you've got time to make it up. If we go through a 2008, obviously that's going to be painful for anybody. But if you go through a 2008 or a 2020 or a 2022, you've got time to make it up if you're in the accumulation phase, if you've got 5, 10, or 15 years until you retire. But if you're in retirement, you don't really have the time to make it up per se. And any mistake there can set you back years. Okay. This is what happened to my parents. I've told the story before, but in 08, 09, my dad was he was the CFO of the household. He was the financial advisor of the household. And based on some bad advice, he moved a large portion of his assets into a fixed annuity and it locked up for 10 years. Okay. He couldn't get that money out quick enough. And he missed out on that run back from 2009 through 2014. That pushed his retirement back a decade. So in that retirement red zone, 10 years before retirement, 10 years after retirement is so critical from an investment management perspective. And if nothing else, forget about customizing or active versus passive or being tactical and managing risk. I think the pure essence of behavioral finance comes into play here. Okay. I've talked about this before. I've shared stories before in this one, but I just think back to 2008, 2009, when it was really going down. Okay. When these decisions of emotion, bringing emotion into the picture. And it's very easy looking back on this. Okay. I got into the industry in 2008. So I remember this. Okay. But it's very easy looking back on this. Just stay the course. Try telling that to someone who's about to retire. Hey, just stay the course. Okay. I remember in 2020, the pandemic, it's very easy to say because that only lasted 4 months. That bear market was a very short-lived bear market. March 23rd was the bottom and then boom, it came back. But try telling that to someone that's literally on the brink of retirement. Hey, don't worry, your portfolio is down 25%. You had 2 million, now you have 1.5. Just stay the course. Very difficult. Okay. Behavioral finance comes into play. And I think having a third party that's disciplined, unemotional, has a repeatable process, the DERP that we like to talk about, DURP, that can really move the needle and potentially save you way in excess of the fees that you would pay from an investment management perspective. That's just my 2 cents on that. All right. And number 5, the final reason ChatGPT threw this out is estate and legacy planning. Yeah, I think this is great. I mean, I think, ultimately many of you are not super concerned about leaving a large financial legacy. But what I find, okay, and a lot of you are probably listening in that 50 to 65 range. What I find is this changes over time. In the beginning of retirement, you're kind of thinking about, hey, I just need to be financially independent. I don't want to be dependent on my children or grandkids down the road. I need to make sure I have enough money where I never outlive the assets and I'm never a burden on my loved ones. Okay. As you get older, into your 70s and even into your 80s, trust me, I see this with my practice right now because we have clients that are going through the aging process. They're in their 70s. Some of them are in their 80s now, and they've been retired for 10 or 15 years. And they kind of realize, okay, you know what? Our go-go years are done. We're not aggressively spending anymore. We've done all the home renovations that we need and want. This is the place we're going to be forever. And they just kind of find that their needs go down. Their financial needs go down. That's why I emphasize those go-go years. But in those slow go and no-go years, it starts to kind of shift towards gifting to family members, gifting to charity, and thinking about the impact that these financial assets are going to have on multiple generations to come becomes a lot more important. And I think, thinking through the estate planning piece, not just from documents. Yeah, you need to have a will. You need to have a durable power of attorney, healthcare surrogate. Maybe you set up a living trust, right? But I think outside of that, it's just like, what is the qualitative side of estate planning? Who are those key people in your estate? Who are those beneficiaries? What's their situation? What's their marital status? Do they have children? Do they have any special needs? And then thinking through what assets should go where, very, very important and very overlooked, in my opinion. The thing that ChatGPT did not mention, so I added number 6 to this one. The thing that ChatGPT did not mention, and in my opinion, this is the real reason, this is the grand finale of it all, is saving you time. Okay. What's your time worth? All right. I think for me, the older that I get, the more valuable I believe my time is. Many of you listening you're probably 2 decades older than you might even be 3 decades older than me. All right. But in the last decade, in my 30s, I've had 3 really, really close friends pass away. And many of you have probably experienced that as well. And probably close family members. Maybe even you've lost your spouse. Maybe you've even lost children. Okay. And I think this idea that your time is worth something, this really resonates with me. As a business owner myself, as an entrepreneur, I'm very crazy about this idea. It's like, I could do it all. Okay. But Dan Sullivan, this book I read at the beginning of this year, Who Not How, this totally blew my mind. It was like, I was constantly asking myself how to do things, right? How do I do this task? How do I do that task? As opposed to who can do this much better than I can, and I will gladly pay them. And ultimately, I'm going to get my time back. That's what I began to think through. And ultimately, frankly, I'm having more fun in my business today than I ever have. Okay. Since launching my firm 4 years ago, I'm having a lot more fun today than I was 4 years ago because I'm doing the things that I love doing. I'm doing this. I'm building relationships with clients. I'm helping people. I'm making an impact. Okay. And my team is just amazing. They do phenomenal work and they free up my time to do the things that I feel like I'm best at. And they're doing things that they love doing. Okay. They're in their sweet spot. Okay. So I think you need to ask yourself, is this something that you want to be spending your retirement on? Okay. Thinking through all these tax mechanics, thinking about the market every day, thinking about this idea of transitioning into retirement in the go year, slow go year, no go phase, thinking about inflation, thinking about, longevity, thinking about legacy. These are things that require expertise and time. And sure, it is not rocket science. Every one of you listening most likely can take the CFP course. You could do the certified financial planning curriculum. It'll probably take you about, maybe 6 months or so. Maybe even you do the exam, you pass the exam, you become a certified financial planner. But even then, how much time did that take you? And then are you an expert at actually implementing the information that was given to you? There's information everywhere. Like I said, I just pulled this information on ChatGPT. Information is at our fingertips at the click of a button. So you could go to ChatGPT and ask them questions about your financial plan, and they could probably give you some basic guidelines. But then sort of understanding, how do you take that information and implement it? I think that's really where you're going to save so much time approaching retirement and then throughout retirement. And I think, what is your time worth? You need to answer that question for yourself. I can't give you that answer. Okay. I have a belief in terms of what my time is worth. And it probably, if I said it out loud, you might be a little bit offended. You might say, oh my gosh, Kevin thinks his time is worth that much. But I'm really crazy about this one because time is the only asset that you can't get back. Okay. You can't get more of. All right. And I saw that quote recently and it kind of blew me away. And I just really think through this because I've had prospective clients reach out to me in the past. And a lot of them were DIYers and they were spending so much time on this. They were like trying to learn and study all of this. And it was confusing them and it was frustrating them. Some of you may be different. Some of you are like, this is my element. I love this. I never want to give it up. You do you. I'm not telling you this is for everybody. This is just my perspective. But some of you are doing this. It's not the lane you should be in. And frankly, you want to be spending more time doing other things. I just think back to this client that hired me back in, 2012, 13. They were on this African safari in 2008 when the market was crashing. You would not believe the stories that his wife told me during that African safari. Literally, she said he ruined the trip. Okay, this was like a bucket list trip at the beginning of the retirement that they were dreaming about together. Just so happened he retired in the worst market ever, at least that we've seen in our lifetime. And how much time was he spending looking at the markets out of, time away from his wife, time away from that vacation? Right then and there, how much time did you just waste by doing that? And ultimately, the decisions that he made, that impacted their retirement. I'll tell you that much. I don't want to get a lot of details on that one, but it made an impact on their retirement. And so I just think, in my opinion, the real reason, if you really kind of create a summary of all of those 5 bullet points that ChatGPT threw out there, It's all about giving you time back to do the things you want to do with the people you care about for as long as you're able to. I mean, that's really at its core, hiring and delegating. Well, that's what it does. I mean, I think back services that this is obviously on a lower scale, but let's say cleaning the house or doing my yard work. I mean, listen, I do enjoy yard work. I'm not one of those people that's like, I hate yard work, I'm going to delegate it. I actually do enjoy it. But I just think about my kids are home on the weekends. I'm home on the weekends. That's probably the time I'm going to be doing the lawn care. I'd rather spend time with my family. I'd rather spend time doing things with them and spending quality time with them, not doing my lawn. So if I'm going to pay someone $120 a month or $150 a month to delegate that, and I don't have to worry about that, I mean, I think that's probably worth tenfold in terms of what I'm paying. And so that's really my humble opinion and to summarize all of those. So hopefully that's helpful. Now we're going to transition to the other prompt. So then I threw out how to find a financial advisor specialized for them. So there are a few things that they put out there. I think this is good. I'm going to touch on some of these. And what I might do is I might include some things in the show notes, some links in the show notes in terms of where I would go if I was searching for a financial advisor, where I would go. And you can take that information there. So the first thing they throw out there is looking for a fiduciary fee only advisor. Okay. So fiduciary fee only, listen, in my opinion, this is just a marketing term nowadays. 10 years ago, I would agree. Yeah. Fiduciary. You want to look for a fiduciary, someone that's looking out for your best interest at all times, fee only. And, truthfully, that's the way my firm operates. We are fee only. We are a quote unquote fiduciary at all times. We never sell commission-based products. We don't get any compensation from any third party other than our clients when they hire us. And I think there's a lot of transparency in that, but I think this gets a little bit blown out of proportion. I think a lot of advisors almost go to this model just so they can grow their business. They think just because they're serving as fee only, just because they're serving as fiduciary, that means all of a sudden they're going to just attract all these new clients. I think I would caution you on that one. And I would just say there are great advisors in the fee only space. There are great advisors in the fee-based space. Fee-based meaning they can charge fees and commissions. And commissions, generally those products that you would be buying from those advisors, life insurance products, long-term care insurance, and annuities. Okay, those are for the PFR Nation. Most likely those are the products that you'd be looking at. All right. And those are good products. Many of those products fit into a well-diversified plan. And I think the fee-only side, they poo-poo a lot of those products. They're anti-annuity. I talked about this on the podcast a few episodes ago. They're anti-annuity. They're anti-life insurance because truthfully, they don't understand it. And they look at those in the kind of the fee-based world, the insurance/investment advisors. They look at them as the enemy. And I just think that's doing a lot of people a disservice because many of you may have a fee-based advisor that manages investments for a fee and also can sell commission-based products. And I'm just telling you, not all of them are bad, but a lot of them are pretty bad. And so if you can find an advisor that is objective and understands where annuities fit into the picture, where long-term care insurance fits in the picture, where even life insurance, permanent life insurance can fit into the picture, but also give you objective advice, that's how you, I think, can win that game. But don't just look for an advisor just because they're a fee only. I think that's what I would just caution you on that. Second thing that GPT said is seek specialists in tax-conscious retirement planning. Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think there's a lot of advisors out there that are honestly handcuffed. They can't even review a tax return. Okay. I just mentioned that, in my previous firm, I wrote tax in an email and I got hammered by my compliance. Imagine if I was at a big firm, a big box firm, and I asked for your tax return. Okay. They would be losing their minds. Okay. But you know what? We review every client's previous 2 years of their tax returns. We keep them all in a little, in the vault. We use a third-party software. It's all encrypted and it's very secure. And we review those tax returns there. And we look for opportunities to minimize IRMA. We look for opportunities for Roth conversions. And so I think this is a must, in my opinion. You can find advisors out there that will review your tax returns. They're not going to prepare your tax necessarily. We don't do tax preparation services, although I am thinking about that. So PFR Nation, if you know any CPAs or tax preparers that want to get out of that business, but or maybe want to continue to do tax prep, but more from a financial planning perspective, let me know because I would love to partner with a great CPA that has a financial planning mindset and we can partner together and actually do tax preparation and financial planning and investment management. That's where I believe my firm is going to go at some point. I just need to find the right fit. So if you know anyone, let me know on that front. But seeking a specialist and seeking a team that understands tax, this is a big reason Roberto, one of my teammates, that he attracted me was his experience filing taxes over the last 5 years. He's an enrolled agent. So when we're doing financial planning for clients, he's got that tax lens and understands, okay, where does this show up in the tax return? Very, very, very important. And many advisors don't really understand or really like talking about taxes. So frankly, this is a big reason why we win clients from some of these big box firms like the Merrill Lynch's, the Morgan Stanley's, the Wells Fargo's. They come over to us because they understand we can do the investment management as well, if not better. Okay, because we have fewer clients to serve. We don't have this fancy office in Manhattan that we have to split the house. We don't do that. Okay, you can see I'm wearing a fleece and a khaki pants. Okay, and I don't have a fancy office, but we can do the investment management because, frankly, that's the blessing of COVID. But we can also weave that into the tax planning opportunities for everybody. Number 3, ChatGPT said, verify credentials and experience. So things like CFP, which is the Certified Financial Planner designation. They even threw CFA out there, Chartered Financial Analysts. They said they often specialize in complex planning and emphasize the importance of asking an advisor's experience working with clients within their age and asset range. That's a good one. I would say asking that advisor, that prospective advisor, hey, who are your clients? Do you work with people like me? Because if I were client hirings, I'd want to know, do you work with people like me? And do you have experience working with people in my situation with the level of assets and complexity that I bring to the table? And if the answer is no, you could find a different advisor. There are plenty of great advisors out there that specialize in whatever niche you are in that you can go and hire the right person. But I would say the one thing I would kind of push back on, the CFA, don't really think that's as important. That's more focused on investment management and sort of economics of the markets. While that is very important, I do believe that you can outsource a lot of the investment management aspects on the financial planning side. And we do that to a certain degree to experts in this field and sort of bring that back in-house. So I don't think CFA is a necessity. I do think CFP is kind of the entry level. I mean, you better be working with a CFP. Okay, no question. That level of standard is the starting point. Just frankly, just because it just takes a level of commitment and just grit to get the CFP. I'd want to make sure my advisors got some of that. Okay, you need to make sure they've got some of that grit. So I think the CFP is a good one, but I'd also throw in there, I am biased, I'd also throw the RICP, which is the Retirement Income Certified Professional. In my opinion, this is the most comprehensive designation specifically related to retirement income planning. So I throw that in there. And I'd also throw a bonus, having a CPA or an enrolled agent designation. Number 4, look for client-focused service models. Remind them that the right advisor will be willing to educate them, review multiple options for complexity, I think really what ChatGPT is trying to say here is looking for an advisor that is client-focused. And it's very easy for an advisor to say, hey, we're client-focused. Every advisory firm is going to say we're client-focused. They'd be stupid to not say that. But I do believe this is where a lot of the big box firms will fall short because they are not necessarily talking about what are some ways we can add value to clients? What are some ways we can optimize their tax plan? What are some ways we can get deeper with our client relationships? They're not really asking themselves those questions. I'm telling you this because I've worked in 2 big box firms for the first 12 years of my career. They are mostly focused on asset growth, revenue growth, commissions, sales, and ultimately that makes sense. I mean, they work for a firm that is publicly traded most likely. Okay. And so their board of directors, every quarter, their shareholder meetings, they're going to need to show that growth on their balance sheet, on their P&L, on their earnings. And if they don't, their stock price is not going to perform well. So it's no duh that the executive team is going to push this down to management and management is going to push that down to their advisory team to focus on those sales growth. I'll give you an example. Fidelity. I'm going to throw them out there. Fidelity, they partnered with New York Life a few years ago to push annuities. And I'm not saying annuities are bad. Annuities are great. But I've seen time and time again, prospective clients or people posting on forums that they were hard sold an annuity by their Fidelity advisor. That's because they're focused on sales. They're focused on revenue growth. And I think, this is really where the independent space shines. If you can find a firm that is independent, they don't have sales goals, they can just focus on doing really good work for clients that are like you, and they specialize and work with people like you. It's just a more relaxed environment. I've definitely felt that way. I mean, over the last 4 years working with people, it's just, I don't feel like I need any business. I show up to a meeting. If a prospective client books a meeting, we just have a conversation. Is this a good fit or not? If it's not, I will tell them other people or other ways to go find an advisor that's a better fit. And better yet, we don't even have that meeting because we have a good screening process beforehand. But I just feel like the independent space, that is a big value add, is working with an advisor, that a firm that is not focused strictly on the revenue goals. Of course, you need to be profitable. I'm not an idiot. I am a business owner at the end of the day. Of course, we need to focus on growth. We need to focus on certain revenue metrics. But I feel like once you hit a certain point, you can really forget about that and just focus on steady Eddie growth and just doing a really good service for the people you serve. That's just my 2 cents. I'd also add virtual is totally the mainstream nowadays. I've definitely seen this trend in the 50 to 60-year-old crowd. The PFR Nation is hiring a virtual advisor, not a concern. Okay. And I think back in the day when I first got into the industry, it was, show up into the office, all these, the mahogany desks and the director of client first impressions. They had your favorite snack right there. I mean, that's all nice, but that costs a pretty penny, okay, to put on that facade for what? Okay. And that's really where I'm a big proponent of, like, I'd rather cut my costs, cut my overhead, work virtually so I can pass on those cost savings to my client. That's just one of the value adds that I believe is part of my duty when we serve our clients as a fiduciary, is just, looking at this idea of reducing expenses, reducing overhead, and ultimately passing those savings onto you, the client. So I think a virtual advisor is totally fine. If you want to work with someone locally in your town, that's fine too. There are ways you can find advisors in your own city, and there are some good, screeners there too. So again, I'm going to do some show notes in this one because I do need to wrap this up here. I need to go meet my wife to meet my boys at the aquarium here in just a second. If you've never been to the Chattanooga Aquarium, you should go. It's a really great experience. But anyways, I'm going to do a little show notes in the back end, and I'm going to put a list of places that I would say you could go search for an advisor here. And some of them might be virtual. Some of them might be hybrid, virtual and in person. Some of them are in person as well. And you can do your own research, do your own due diligence. But I hope you guys found this helpful. I hope you guys found this episode helpful to sort of get in the mindset of, hey, yes, I've done a great job on my own getting to this point, but when should I look for help? When should I look for guidance? Okay. When should I look for assistance on this one? All right. And then ultimately, I guess real quick, I want to throw in one other thing. Fee only, commission based, fee based. I think I touched on this just a little bit before, but I'd also kind of throw in this idea of flat fee versus asset under management. Okay. This is an important topic. All right. Because in the fee only space, and I wrote this article actually on my website, why flat fee only. It's actually it's literally a standalone page, why flat fee only. And I think I put this on my blog post as well. So in the fee only space, you have two different designations. You've got asset under management. So fee only means they're just paying a fee. So they're not charging any commissions. They're not selling any products. They just charge fees. But you've got this idea of like an asset under management fee, which is a percentage of assets versus flat fee. I'm going to just go out and say there is no one size fits all. No fee structure is necessarily better or worse in general. But I do think there are fee structures that favor individual clients more than others. Okay. And the flat fee model, I like that because as the portfolio size grows, as the assets grow, you can cap the fee to a certain extent so the client isn't overpaying. I mean, for example, if an advisor is charging a percentage of assets, let's say it's 1%, okay? Let's say you have $4 million. What is that 1% times $4 million? That's $40,000 a year. And I think the rub against that I have and others is that does your 1%, the $40,000 fee, is it justified? Are you doing 2x the work versus someone who's got maybe $2 million? Okay. So if you kind of look at it from that lens of the time spent doing an activity, the time spent doing the service, and if you kind of look at yourself as an hourly, what am I paying per hour? You're paying a heck of a lot more on the 1% side. Now, on the flip side of that, if the advisor on the flat fee side is not worth their weight in salt, you're not going to get the value back that you could have gotten if the advisor that was charging 1% provided. So that's what I'm saying, is that there's no better or worse structure on the fee only side. We do operate on a flat fee only schedule, and it is by design. I think I like the transparency the best, is because I can just quote the fee and say, hey, this is what you're going to pay on an annual basis. Your portfolio grows over time. We take distributions out. You're still paying a fair fee as a context of the value that you're receiving. So I just wanted to end on that one, is that the fee structure on the fee only side, I think there's a lot of people that get super, super into the weeds on this one. And I just wanted to tell you that there is no best fee model on the fee only side. So anyways, All right, I got to run. But listen, I appreciate all of you. Again, I hope you guys found this helpful. And if you did find it helpful, make sure to share this with someone else who's PFR Nation caliber. Okay, someone who's in the boat of, let's say, 50 to 60 plus. They're good savers. They're diligent savers. They're now thinking about, hey, how do I achieve financial independence? How do I retire successfully? What are some of the things I need to be thinking of? Because this is what this podcast is geared towards. So make sure to share it with a friend or family member. And of course, if you're finding value in our content, do me a favor. Of course, make sure to follow the show, but make sure to leave us a review. That helps us a lot. It helps trick the algorithm so it's pushed to more people and we can impact more people, because that's really what it gets me excited is impacting more people, okay? So the more people that like the show, the more people that listen to the show, the more people that subscribe to the channel, the more impact we're making, and that gets me fired up. So, all right, PFR Nation, that's all for now, and I'll see y'all next time. Kevin Lau signing off.